Hello, I'm Jonasz Rewiński and you're watching Break the Fake. They make them, we break them, and tell you everything you need to know. It seems Vladimir Putin might be about to enter his finding out phase after all. On the evening of the 14th of July, US President Donald Trump announced the possible imposition of secondary sanctions against Russia and an agreement with NATO to transfer a new package of weapons to Ukraine. The president announced the arms transfer after a meeting with NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte. In particular, Trump declared his readiness to provide Kiev with new Patriot missile systems. Now, Trump said he was very unhappy with Russia over the war in Ukraine and is now considering sanctions, including of the secondary kind, just like we've mentioned. In other words, countries that buy Russian oil and gas are likely to get slapped with an unpleasant extra cost designed to make them think twice. Meanwhile, Ukraine's European allies will foot the bill for US weapons destined for Ukraine, for the win-win scenario of the MAGA era, apparently. So far, so good, especially if we get to see some long-range goodies thrown into the mix. Press reports indicate JASM extended-range missiles. Fingers crossed for that.
One of the reasons that you're here today is to hear that we are very unhappy, I am, with Russia. But we'll discuss that maybe a different day. But we're very, very unhappy with them, and we're going to be doing very severe tariffs if we don't have a deal in 50 days. Tariffs at about 100%. You'd call them secondary tariffs. You know what that means.
All in all, this could very much be the Trump redemption arc that Ukraine fans have been waiting for. Of course, from Putin's perspective, it's more of a villain arc. But I suppose this is what all of us wanted, right? Salty Russians with unhappy faces. The few comments so far released by the Kremlin are mostly trying to shift the blame on Zelensky, urging Trump to get tough with him again. Feeling triggered? Pro tip for Team Putin: perhaps try not bombing towns and cities next time while pretending to negotiate. It makes you look dumb. That's today's top fake broken like a twig, by the way. For best results in peace talks, go full Bin Laden on civilians, the Russians seem to be saying. Well, nope, it doesn't work. Previously, the American president has repeatedly demonstrated a willingness to make concessions. He would often gone on about how Putin was a nice guy, but some of us knew this simply would never last. As Putin ended up showboating with his Shahed swarms, rubbing it in Trump's face that no, he and his troops will not leave Ukraine without pushing up the death toll, the US president must have felt a bit chagrined. Now, pro tip number 2. When you have a guy in the room who has the keys to a B-2 loaded with bunker busters, you don't want him to feel chagrined. Otherwise, you'll proceed to the finding out phase. And yet, here is Putin, like the guy in the 2-button meme template, brow sweating, wondering if FAFO could be the better option than genuine peace talks. Well, good luck with that.
I'd get home, I'd say, First Lady, I had the most wonderful talk with Vladimir. I think we're finished. And then I'll turn on the television, or she'll say to me one time, wow, that's strange because they just bombed a nursing home. I said, what? So...
This admission by President Trump has actually created quite a considerable buzz on social media, with Melania Trump becoming the pro-Ukraine meme heroine who's taking the world by storm. Sometimes it might be a good idea to let a woman bring some empathy and common sense into the cold world of politics. Meanwhile, we hope Kiev gets the means to seriously mangle Moscow's military-industrial complex. This and sanctions on Russia biting down right now. No need to wait those 50 days. Spare the First Lady the sight of bombed cities. She clearly doesn't like that. Pro tip number 3 for Team Putin. A pro tip to rule them all, actually. Give Ukraine back all its territory and leave. Now. Recently, in a new interview for a Russian TV channel, the so-called Human Rights Commissioner in the Russian Federation, Tatyana Moskalkova, expressed outrage. She said that Russian soldiers look unattractive in textbooks for Ukrainian children. One with a cigarette, the other one with a bottle of vodka. Outrageous.
Мы выезжали в те регионы, которые освобождены от нацистов, и в том числе школы, детские сады, где собирали книжки. Это украинские школы. И они у нас хранятся в музее вот с детского возраста. В ярких, красивых детских книжках насаждается ненависть к русскому языку, к русскому человеку, к России в целом. На этих картинках вы увидите, что если это украинский военнослужащий, он симпатично одетый, он презентабелен, а русский военный, он будет с бутылкой водки, с сигаретой. И вот эта вот ложь, которая внедрялась в умы детей, она, конечно, проросла вот эти страшные явления неонацизма.
In textbooks for Ukrainian children, the Russian soldier is indeed not portrayed in the best light. But who's to blame that he's wearing a uniform from 1983? Ukrainian illustrators simply draw what they see. A soldier on TikTok stealing household items and drinking vodka against the backdrop of a bombed-out house. This is actual reality TV. Unless the soldier is Kadyrov's TikTok trooper, in which case he should also be firing a Kalashnikov at a nearby vegetation or something. Now, since 2022, Russian propaganda has been portraying its own soldiers as heroes, strong, fragrant, like in a deodorant commercial. But Ukrainian children live in reality, not fiction. And the reality is this: when a Russian soldier comes to your city, you don't think about soft lightning, you think about evacuation. And if a kid in a kindergarten draws a Russian with a bottle, it's because that's what his dad actually saw through the first-person cam on an attack drone. While the Russian Federation is worried about why its soldiers are ugly in drawings, children in Ukraine just want the war to end. They just want to live their lives. Also, ugly soldiers, really? Shouldn't Moscow worry more about, the unalived ones? When you have over 1 million casualties, the last thing you need to care about is aesthetics. And trust me, none of the Russians in the army right now want to pose for pictures in a body bag. While the whole world continues to exclude Russia from international sport competitions, from football to chess, Russia, as always, is trying alternative options. This time, it has invented its own new sports discipline, and it involves manure. Yeah, literally cow dung. There, I said it, the unfiltered truth, not even kidding. Check it out.
Кто сколько зрителей попал, тот и победил. Максимушка с мячом от американского футбола получилось бы лучше.
See? Russian Quidditch. I guess we should marvel at the adaptability of the Russian athletes. This new discipline certainly combines the health benefits of outdoor exercise with the diminished carbon footprint of using 100% natural-sourced sports accessories. Also, interacting with manure has plenty of educational benefits, raising awareness of cattle biology and sustainability. Finally, there is the spiritual dimension, circle of life and all that, And don't you dare mock this noble experiment with poop emoji, you decadent Westerners. Remember how Trump recently said Putin was throwing BS at everyone while pretending to negotiate? Well, apparently, it's not just Putin. In Russia, throwing BS is now a national pastime. And that's all for now on this episode of Break the Fake. Please stay with us here on TVP World for more latest news and updates.